Hey crafty friends, welcome back to another Teach Me Tracy How To video, where this week, this video, I am going to share with you how to heat emboss. That is one of the questions that I get asked a lot, is all the ins and outs of heat embossing. And I don't know about you, but that was one of the techniques that totally wowed me into this crafting fun, was seeing the magic of heat embossing. So let's get started with another how-to video. Okay, so let's start off with the must-haves for heat embossing. You're gonna need some Versamark ink. This is basically a really sticky ink. It's clear and it's needed to hold the powder. So this is our Wow embossing powder. This is our metallics set, which comes with gold, silver, and copper. We also have a set that has black, white, and clear. So we have two options for those. So those are must-haves for heat embossing, as well as your heat tool. So a lot of times people will say, well, can I just use a hair dryer or something like that? But I will attest to the fact that you cannot, because when you use a hair dryer, it's not the same as the heat tool. It doesn't get as hot. And what you need is the heat from your heat tool to melt the powder on the sticky ink for your image to change from this powdery kind of texture to a glossy, melted, wowy thing, right? So let's bring in some grid paper here, and I'm going to show you how to heat emboss. So I just have some crumb cake here, and I'm also going to show you some extra additions to your heat embossing tools and things you might want to use with it. The heat tool, the sticky ink, and the powder are the three must-haves to heat emboss. But then there are some other things that make heat embossing a little easier and make it just a little bit better. So we have this tool kit. It's called the Embossing Heat Tool Additions Kit, and it comes with this great embossing tray. It comes with our embossing buddy, which is our anti-static tool. I'm going to show you how to use that. It comes with a brush that is very helpful, and also some reverse tweezers. Now, I love these because heat embossing, you're using your heat tool, it's very, very hot, right? So if you're holding your paper and you've got, you know, some images on here that you're gonna heat emboss, and you're holding it and you're putting the heat tool right here, well, it gets your fingers quite hot when you're close, right? So I love the tweezers to get some distance between my fingers and what I'm heating up. And so to me, it's just safer and makes embossing a little bit more pleasurable, right? Don't want to burn our fingers off. So I'm going to show you how to use these. The tray works so good to hold everything while you're embossing. So you can put your powder, sprinkle it on your image, use the brush to brush off any excess powder that you don't want to show on your project. And it's great for that. Also, if you get powder in your tray, there is this handy little spout, so you can unscrew the cap, and then you would be able to put that powder right back into the little jar if you were had excess, so then there's no waste. So the tray is great for helping you to not have any waste. You can see there is the spout, right? So you can just brush all your extra powder into that little spout, then undo that little cap and pour everything right back into your little container. So I like to have a lot of room for my embossing. So something that I like to do is get a plastic container, and I just can then, I have a little spoon in there, and I'm able to, so I just have a few containers of the gold in here, and I still use this tray to just kind of catch anything. It keeps my table a lot cleaner, but I love the little plastic containers because it just gives me a little more room to have my powder all organized. So I have mine in those. That's just an option, an extra thing, along with this toolkit, right? Just an extra thing to make things easier. And then I also have one of our foam mats that I dedicate just for heat embossing, because this gets very hot. Your heat tool gets very hot. And so I just like to keep mine on here. And then also while I'm heating something up, this little foam mat protects my surface, my desk, or whatever you're heat embossing on. And so if I'm holding my image or my cardstock with my stamped image and I'm heat embossing, I can use the foam mat as a guide as well as a protector. If it's something larger and I'm not using that, then I can also just do it like so. So I just dedicate this one to my heat embossing, and I also like to rest my embossing heat tool on there so it also protects my desk. So that's just kind of the background on embossing. Now let me show you some of this embossing magic. So I'm just going to move some of this stuff out of the way, and I'm going to show you a couple of embossing techniques. The first one is we're going to use gold. So I just have a heart image here, just something easy so that you can just see how awesome heat embossing is. So I'm just going to ink up this heart, and we're just going to stamp one heart in the corner there. So you see we've got the clear ink on there. Now you can let this dry and it will just show just like so. And that's kind of nice, you know, like that as well, if you just wanted like a clear image. But let me grab my tray here. Let's take our powder here. So I've got my gold embossing powder here. I have just my little spoon. Okay. And you saw what I did. I just scooped up the powder, put it on there, and then we're just going to kind of tap the excess off. Okay. Now I'm going to move this to the side, and let's grab those tweezers to hold it in place. Now it may get a little loud because we're going to turn this on. There's two settings. You'll see here, I like to use the high, and then I'm going to get close so you can see it's just a powder right now. We're going to add some heat to it. I'm going to give it a second, and you should be able to see the change as it heats up. There it goes. And now our image, let's let the camera focus there for a second. But can you see now we have a raised, heated up, glossy metallic, look at that shine. Now, I purposely didn't use the embossing buddy, and I want you to see that you can see, do you see kind of right here below the heart, how there's just some excess powder flakes kind of all over that area? Well, I don't always love that on projects, right? So a way to prevent that is to bring in our little embossing buddy. Now, I just like to put a little clip on it so that it doesn't get all over my hands. The chalk, do you see that white chalk on there? It's an anti-static, so if we were to rub this all over our project before we stamped it, and then brought back in our heart stamp and our Versamark sticky ink, right? And now we did a heart in this corner, brought back in our powder, put our powder over our heart, tap off any excess. Now, if you have any like big spots, you can use your little brush and to just brush off any excess that you might see. That's why that comes in handy. Then we'll get our tweezers again and hold that. And now let's emboss this second heart. So we'll just turn on our heat tool and we'll watch this change from a dusty powder to a beautiful gold metallic. Do you see it? Okay. Now, if you notice, once the camera focuses there, there's no little leftover residual powder like there is around this heart because of that heat anti-static embossing buddy, we like to refer to it, right? Because it's our buddy. So that is one way to heat emboss. And I think the gold is one of our most beautiful embossing powders, right? Because you really get that gold shine, really elevates your project, right? So another embossing powder that we have that I'm going to show you today, there's black and white and silver, copper, but another one that is an unsung hero is our clear. Wow, right? It's a clear gloss, and people are always asking me, how do I use it? What would I use that for? Why is that important? And so let's bring in my tray here, and I am going to take my heart again. Now we've already used our embossing buddy, so let's just do 3 of these hearts down the middle, just to show you the magic of clear. Okay, so we've got just our three hearts. We've got our clear powder, so I'm just going to take this and spoon it on top of that. Need a little more on that one. Tap off any excess. You can use the side of your container as well. So you see it's got kind of like that dusty clear powder on there, right? We'll bring in our tweezers to save our fingers here. And then we're going to turn on our heat tool. We're going to turn this powdery clear. Oh, you can really see this one change, right? So the clear is awesome for giving any kind of texture to your project. Okay? So we've got those on there. There's no color. It's just basically a crumb cake on crumb cake, right? But now you have that glossy finish. So anytime you want just that glossy finish without color or shine like a gold, right? Then the clear works perfect for that. So it's great for like tone on tone. This would be a beautiful background. I even have a little sponge dauber that I use for my Versamark. And why don't we even do that? So I've got my sponge dauber here. And let's say I wanted to create just like a polka dot background, right? Let's just do those 3 right there. So we just get our sponge dauber and we just did 3 circles there basically, right? With our sponge dauber. Put the cap back on my Versamark. I'll bring back in my clear. We're just playing here so you can see some of this. But I'll just go ahead and put my clear right on top of those with the sponge dauber. It kind of acts like a little stamp for us, right? And then we'll bring in our tweezers once again. Turn on our heat tool real quick. And now we're gonna have this fun, almost like a polka dot background, right? That we've created with that sponge dauber and the clear. So just, you can really see the texture there, right? So just another idea to use with the clear, but you can really turn that clear will be any color because it just really emphasizes whatever color paper that you have. So in my book, like I said, let's just recap. So the heat embossing must-haves are your heat tool, your embossing powder, of course, and your, I call it my sticky ink, but it's your Versamark, they call it a watermark stamp pad. So those are your heat embossing must-haves. And then your additional tools that you might want to just help your heat embossing along would be our heat embossing additions toolkit, maybe a foam mat to just protect your surfaces. And then if you wanted to do maybe a clear container to hold your powders, a little spoon, and maybe a sponge dauber for some of those fun techniques. All right, well that is heat embossing in a nutshell, right? So I hope those tips are helpful to give you really the basics of heat embossing, and maybe we'll be back for another how-to on some extra tips for heat embossing, like a 2.0 embossing. But I've had lots of questions on Heat Embossing 101, and I hope that has answered them. Thanks so much for watching. Please keep commenting. Tell me, I love to hear what you want to know next on one of our how-to videos, how to use a tool, how to do a certain technique. You tell me what you'd love to learn. Have a great week, everyone, and I'll see you soon.